On May 6, 2001, Dr. Linda Kramer, a woman living in the United States, entering a strange and extraordinary phase of her life that she could never have imagined. Before she experienced her near-death event, her life seemed to proceed like anyone else's. She had been married, although her relationship with her husband at the time had deteriorated, leaving them living like strangers under the same roof. That unhappy marriage contributed to her constant feelings of loneliness and alienation, despite having a partner by her side. Linda lived in a small house in the suburbs, where she usually woke up early in the morning to start her day with mundane chores. The daily concerns of life, unpaid bills to taking care of the pets, consumed her mind. In reality, Linda's life at the time was nothing remarkable, and she had no idea that her fate would change forever in just a brief moment. That night, when she fell asleep, there was no indication of anything unusual or foreshadowing of what was to come. She was simply tired and needed rest. But at around 2 a.m., Linda suddenly awoke. This sensation was unlike the usual times when she woke up from an unpleasant dream. There was something very strange. Linda wondered why she had woken up, but she did not feel fear. Instead, she got up and went to the bathroom, as if it were a routine. She sat down, but suddenly a strange feeling swept over her. Everything around her seemed to blur, and in that moment, Linda felt as if she were floating. She could not comprehend what was happening. Her mind was still trying to connect with reality, but her body seemed no longer to belong to her. It was at that moment that she realized she was outside her body. Linda looked down and saw herself floating on the ceiling of her living room, looking down at the floor where her body lay motionless in the bathroom. This feeling wasn't one of fear, but rather a strange sense of peace, as if she had been released from all the worries of earthly life. All the things that had once caused her anxiety, money, relationships, work, suddenly seemed meaningless. Linda felt light and free, with no attachments whatsoever. From her floating position, Linda saw her husband, who was still her husband at the time, rush into the living room in a panic upon realizing what had happened. He opened the door, and 2 paramedics rushed in. She watched the scene with an unusual calmness. Linda did not feel anxious or scared, even though she knew they were trying to save her body. Everything unfolded like a slow-motion film, while Linda just stood there, watching from afar, unable to intervene, call out to them. In the following moments, Linda witnessed the paramedics working urgently, using medical equipment in an attempt to bring her back. She saw them working, but in that moment, time seemed to cease to exist. She could no longer feel the presence of time. Everything seemed to be suspended in a strange state where none of the elements of earthly life could affect her. As the paramedics continued their work, more people arrived at the scene, including police officers and firefighters. Linda realized that despite how many people were in that small house, none of them could sense her presence there in her floating state. She noticed something peculiar. She had no feet, which further confirmed that she had truly detached from her physical body. What surprised Linda even more was the sense of peace she felt throughout this time. Gone were the feelings of anxiety or unease. She no longer thought about daily problems like unpaid bills, caring for her pets. All of that had disappeared, and she felt a lightness, comfort unlike anything she had ever experienced. She realized that time had passed without her noticing. After 45 minutes, when the paramedics took her body out of the house on a stretcher, Linda continued to observe. She watched as they placed her body into the ambulance and began to drive away. However, at that moment, something strange happened. Bright blue orbs appeared in the space around her. They floated around her as if communicating in a language that did not belong to the human world. These orbs were a deep blue, glowing vibrantly with a core of pure white energy. Linda sensed the intelligence of these orbs as they floated around her, as if they were observing and protecting her on the mysterious journey she was embarking on. The blue orbs moved around her for a while, then suddenly flew out of the door and disappeared. Before Linda could comprehend what had just happened, she suddenly found herself standing in a vast field of flowers. Everything around her had changed. She was no longer in her small house, no longer floating in the living room. Instead, she stood in the middle of a breathtakingly beautiful natural landscape, with towering mountains in the distance and a deep blue sky overhead. The field of flowers she stood in was unlike any place she had ever seen. The mountains were taller than even Mount Everest, and the skyscrapers she saw in the distance looked like tiny huts compared to what she was witnessing. This scenery opened up an entirely new chapter in Linda's journey, a place where the boundaries of reality as she had known them completely broken. After experiencing the sensation of detachment from her body and observing everything from afar, Linda suddenly realized she had left the familiar space of her small home. She no longer felt the presence of the rescue team, police, or anything that belonged to the earthly world. Instead, she was standing in an entirely new space, an endless field of flowers stretching out before her, with towering mountains rising higher than the sky. The mountain range she saw in the distance was unlike any mountain she had ever known on Earth. It was so massive that it seemed to surpass every definition of height humans could comprehend. The majestic peaks were sharper and more prominent than anything she had ever seen, even taller than Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world she knew of. The landscape before Linda was not only vast, but it was also teeming with life and color, almost surreal in its vividness. In the far distance, Linda also saw skyscrapers. They appeared tiny, like miniature houses, compared to the colossal scenery she was witnessing. These buildings, with heights she could never have imagined, seemed to be part of another world, a world no longer constrained by the physical laws she once knew. Linda could sense that she was standing in the midst of a different realm, where time did not exist, and everything was possible. The most astonishing aspect, however, was the transformation within Linda herself in this space. She realized that she had the ability to move instantly. All she had to do was think about being in a particular place, and immediately, she would be there. If she wanted to stand atop the highest mountain in the range, fleeting thought would take her there in an instant, allowing her to gaze at the vast world below. There were no limits to her movement. Everything happened quickly and naturally. But it wasn't just her ability to move instantly. Linda also realized she could change anything about herself, the mere thought. If she wanted a new hairstyle, all she had to do was think of it, and the new hairstyle would appear instantly. If she wanted to transform into an animal, she simply imagined it, and she became that creature. At one point, she even tried turning into a duck, and immediately, she found herself swimming in a pond as a real duck. In this world, everything Linda thought of became reality. She began to understand that this world did not operate according to the rules of space and time like it did on Earth, but instead, it was governed by thought and individual perception. She gradually realized that everything in this realm was a result of her thinking, and it was her thoughts that created the realities she was experiencing. Days in this world passed without any sense of time. Linda estimated that she had been there for about 18 months. She could never be certain because time had no meaning here. She walked along endless pathways, explored cities, and even climbed towering mountains without feeling tired or restricted by her physical body. She began to notice that everything around her was a reflection of her mind and desire. During these walks, Linda met and interacted with many other people. She didn't just observe them from afar, but even became them, living and experiencing their lives in a profound way. Once, she saw a woman dressed in medieval clothing walking along a path ahead of her. Curious, Linda followed the woman, but as she got closer, she was surprised to realize that she had become the woman herself. When she turned around, Linda saw herself walking behind. But at that moment, she was no longer Linda. She had become the medieval woman. This experience was not just about changing bodies. It was a complete immersion into the life of that woman. Linda felt everything from the woman's perspective, thoughts, emotions, and all the experiences the woman had ever had in her life. Linda understood that in this world, people did not exist as isolated individuals. They were part of a larger entity, a collection of all the experiences and lives they had ever lived. Linda also began to understand that the world she was exploring was not just a resting place after death. It was a place where people returned to their true essence, accumulated experiences from many different lives. She became part of this world, and each time she became someone else, she gained more knowledge and understanding from their lives. This was not just a personal journey. It was a deep exploration into the nature of existence. After what Linda estimated to be about 18 months in this world, she suddenly felt a light tap on her shoulder. This sensation brought her back to reality, and she realized that she had become so absorbed in her discoveries that she had forgotten someone else was with her. Linda turned around and saw a woman, someone who felt familiar. She couldn't quite remember who. The woman said nothing, only smiled and gestured that it was time for Linda to leave this place. The mysterious woman led Linda to a massive structure, resembling a grand cathedral. She stepped inside and saw enormous wooden pews, so large that no tree on earth could possibly be big enough to create them. The atmosphere in the cathedral was filled with sacredness and mystery. Here, Linda stood before three energetic beings at the front. These three beings said nothing, but Linda could sense that they were communicating with her through an invisible language, the language of the mind and soul. Linda sensed that these three beings were representations of divinity, possibly symbols of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, although they did not resemble any religious images Linda had ever thought of. These three beings radiated a powerful energy, like a waterfall flowing upward instead of down, and all the streams of energy swirled in every direction at once. Linda felt that she was standing before a crucial process in her journey. Although no one explicitly told her what to do, she instinctively knew she had an important task to complete. In front of her was a mysterious box, containing all the memories and actions of her life. Linda sensed that she was about to embark on a life review, a journey where she would have to face everything she had done throughout. Linda stood before the mysterious box, filled with memories and actions for her entire life. The three energy beings said nothing, but deep within her mind, she clearly sensed that this was a necessary part of her journey. Strangely, she knew that this box wasn't just an inanimate object, but a gateway to her past, where every moment she had experienced was stored and waiting for her to explore. As Linda opened the box, she was surprised to see each of her memories appear as small glowing orbs, each containing a part of her life she had lived. These orbs sparkled and lit up like tiny screens displaying the moments of her life. Some orbs made Linda smile, but others caused her pain. This was her life, from childhood to adulthood, from simple joys to deep sorrows she had faced. This process wasn't like watching a movie where everything is quickly and objectively replayed. Instead, she had to relive every moment, feel every emotion, not just from her own perspective, but also from the perspectives of the others she had interacted with. This made Linda realize that life wasn't just about what she saw, but also about how her actions affected the people around her. One of the first memories that appeared was when Linda was a child, playing with her grandmother's white cat. She saw herself in that memory, just around 6 months old, sitting on the floor and pulling the cat's tail. It seemed like an innocent moment, but as Linda relived it, she realized that this small action had left a mark on her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. Returning to that memory, Linda not only felt it from her own perspective, but she also became the white cat itself. She could feel the fear and pain of the cat as its tail was pulled, and the helplessness it felt in the face of a baby too young to understand its actions. Linda relived the entire moment, both her perspective and the cat's, gaining a deeper understanding of how her actions impacted the world around her. This wasn't an easy experience. Linda became acutely aware that every action, no matter how small, had consequences and left a lasting impression not only on her life, but also on the lives of others. These memories were not just film-like scenes, but vivid experiences she had to confront, understand, and heal from. Each time she faced a painful memory, she had to process her emotions, forgive herself and those involved, before that memory would fade away and no longer have a hold on her. Linda referred to this as the memory healing process. Each memory, once understood and healed, would dissolve like a small orb rising up and disappearing, leaving an empty space in the box. This didn't mean the memory was completely erased, but it had been freed from all burdens and negative emotion. Linda recalled other memories, from the simple joy of riding a bike for the first time to the painful moments of losing loved ones. She had to relive the full range of emotions from these moments, facing the pain she had buried deep inside. Linda realized that the negative emotions she had held onto for so long had not only affected her life, but had also caused long-lasting psychological burdens. Now was the time for her to face it all, free herself, the haunting past. This process went on for what felt like months, and Linda felt as if she had spent years healing all the wounds of her soul. However, time in this space didn't exist in the way she once understood. She couldn't feel the flow of time, only knowing that she had faced thousands of memories and healed them one by one. Each time she healed a memory, she felt lighter, as if she was shedding burdens that had weighed heavily on her shoulder. Some memories made Linda cry. Tears were not like those she shed while alive. These tears did not fall but simply evaporated into the space, as though her emotions were being absorbed and released. Linda realized that each tear carried the pain she had held in her heart for so many years. Now, they no longer affected her. Throughout this process, Linda not only had to confront the actions she had inflicted on others, but she also had to relive the moments when others had hurt. She felt her own pain from various perspectives, learning how to forgive those who had caused her harm. This was not an easy process, but it helped her realize that forgiveness wasn't just for others, it was for herself as well. One of the most important lessons Linda learned during the life review was the importance of forgiveness. She realized that each time she forgave someone, or even forgave herself, she was releasing a part of the negative energy, clearing the path for healing. This was a valuable lesson she would carry with her the rest of her life, knowing that it would deeply influence the way she lived after her return. As Linda continued to relive each memory, she also began to understand the meaning of every moment in her life. She realized that nothing was insignificant. Even the smallest actions had a profound impact on her life and on the lives of those around her. Every time she laughed, every time she cried, every word and every action left an indelible mark. This realization made Linda see that earthly life, however brief, offered deeply valuable lessons. After healing thousands of memories, Linda felt lighter. She no longer carried the weight of the past on her shoulders, and she knew she was ready for the next step in her journey. Though the life review had been a challenging experience, it had given her a clearer understanding of the nature of life and the interconnectedness of all beings in the universe. After going through the life review and healing thousands of memories, Linda felt as though she had completed a long and challenging journey of transformation. She no longer felt burdened by the weight of the past, and a strange sense of peace filled her heart. She realized that everything in her life had a purpose, and she had learned important lessons from even the smallest moments. But she also understood that her journey wasn't over yet. A light tap on her shoulder woke her from this dreamlike state. Linda turned around and saw the woman she had met earlier, the one she had always sensed was an important part of her life. This woman, whom Linda later confirmed to be her spiritual guide, gestured that it was time for Linda to leave this world. "It's time to go back," the woman said, and although Linda didn't want to leave the beautiful natural scenery, she knew she had no other choice. As Linda was being led back, she had no idea where she was returning to, or whether she would be ready to face the earthly world after such a magical journey. In her mind, many questions remained unanswered, but she sensed that something significant was waiting for her ahead. She was led to an entirely white space, with no walls, no ceiling, and no floor. It was nothing but pure, white light, enveloping her from every direction. This was not the place she had been before. This was somewhere else, filled with purity and peace. Linda realized that she was standing in a place where no physical elements could affect her. There was no gravity, no time, just her and the woman guiding her. In the distance, a figure began to appear. At first, it was just a small dot, but it gradually grew larger as it approached. The woman continued to guide Linda until she could see the person coming toward her more clearly. As they got closer, Linda recognized an elderly woman with a wise yet weathered face. She was dressed in clothing from the 19th century, looking like something out of the history books Linda had seen. This elderly woman approached Linda with a sharp, dignified gaze. "Who are you?" Linda asked, unable to hide the curiosity in her voice. The woman smiled gently but also had a stern look in her eye. "I am Karina," he replied, "great-grandmother, and I am here to welcome you back." Linda was stunned. Her great-grandmother, the one she had only heard stories about in the family, was now standing before her. This was not just a family reunion. It was a significant turning point in Linda's journey. Karina began to tell Linda about her life, about the years she had lived in the 19th century. She spoke about the hardships of building a life with her bare hands, about selecting each tree to build a home, and about living in a world full of challenges, but also filled with love and patience. She told Linda about her husband, family, and the decisions she had to make to ensure her family's survival. Linda listened to Karina's story, deeply feeling the connection between the generations in her family. She wasn't just hearing about the past, she was also learning lessons about patience, courage, and the love that Karina had passed down through the generation. After sharing her life story, Karina looked Linda directly in the eyes and said, "You must return. You still have much to do. Your journey isn't over." Linda remained silent, trying to understand what Karina was saying. "How do I return?" Linda asked, feeling as though she was being pulled into a reality she couldn't control. Karina didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and gently touched Linda's shoulder. "You will know how when the time comes," she said, and immediately Linda felt a wave of energy surge through her body. Karina continued to speak about Linda's future and what she would have to face after returning to the earthly world. She warned that life would not be easy and that there would be challenges Linda had to overcome. But she also reassured Linda that she had been equipped with everything she needed to face those challenges. "You've learned so much on this journey," Karina said, "and now it's time for you to apply what you've learned in the real world." Karina also made predictions about Linda's future, telling her that she would work with the police for 10 years, rest for 2 years, and then become a first aid trainer. Linda felt that these predictions weren't just empty words. She knew deep down that this was the path she was meant to follow in the future. As the conversation ended, Karina once again reminded Linda of her responsibility and mission on Earth. She said that Linda had been entrusted with a great responsibility and that she needed to fulfill it, or she could truly rest. Karina's final words echoed in Linda's mind like a reminder that, no matter how difficult life might be, her life had great purpose, and she needed to accomplish it. Linda could feel herself slowly drifting away from this white world, returning to her body on Earth. But before she left, she turned back to look at Karina one last time, and saw a warm smile on her face. "Be strong, Linda. I'm always with you," Karina said before her image slowly faded and disappeared into the white space. Linda felt a powerful force pulling her back into her body. She felt as though she was free-falling through space, then suddenly woke up in the hospital where she had been lying motionless for days. She felt a sharp pain in her body, but at the same time, she knew she had come back to life. She opened her eyes and saw a nurse standing by her bed, wide-eyed in surprise. "You're awake," the nurse said, her voice full of astonishment. Linda didn't know what had happened during the time she had been unconscious, but she knew that she had undergone an unforgettable journey, a journey that had changed her forever. In the days that followed, Linda gradually returned to her normal life, but with a new awareness of the world and of herself. She was no longer the ordinary woman she had once been. She had experienced both life and death, and she knew that her mission on Earth wasn't over yet. Linda began to write her story, sharing the lessons she had learned, hoping that these insights would help others on their journeys.